This is a film record of a few moments in time. The Veterans Day ceremonies at Arlington National Cemetery on November 11th, 1963. For those who were there, these moments were burned forever in their memory. In one of his last official acts on behalf of our war veterans, President John F. Kennedy placed a wreath on the tomb of the unknown. 2 weeks later, to the day, the mortal remains of President Kennedy were brought to Arlington National Cemetery to rest among those he had honored. The Tomb of the Unknowns overlooks the city of Washington. It is guarded in honor every day of the year. Every day of the year, not only on Veterans Day, people come to pay their respects, to look, to remember. But Veterans Day is special. A day to honor the dead and the living. A day of rededication. So they gather here on November 11th, the planners, the veterans, the people, as they gather in other places, millions of them, all over the nation, for military and civil ceremonies, and for prayer.
Stand by.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. The President has entered the cemetery and is receiving a 21-gun salute at the present time. He will arrive at the North Walk to the amphitheater in approximately 2 minutes and proceed to the plaza to place the presidential wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns. Commander of the Parade of Colors, hoist the colors. The 6 freedom torches now being presented by representatives of the following nations: Belgium, France, Great Britain, Israel, Italy, and Mexico. This portion of these ceremonies pays tribute to all veterans here and abroad and emphasizes the desire for peace shared by the peoples of the world and the dedication of free nations to that goal.
The Chairman of the Veterans Day National Committee, the Honorable John S. Gleason, Jr., the Administrator of Veterans Affairs. Mr. Administrator.
Mr. President, my fellow Americans, throughout our nation and in cemeteries where fighting men are buried throughout the entire world, the living are joining together today to pay their homage to those who turned back the tides that would have destroyed freedom. But we must remember that Veterans Day is not solely a day to honor sacrifices made by our honored dead in past wars, for it is also a day to honor the living men who fought for freedom and who joined together in working for a more prosperous America and a more peaceful world.
David M. Shoup, the American, and my friend, General Shoup.
Mr. President, Americans and friends of Americans, these hallowed graves in this national cemetery are but mute and constant reminders that there are countless American graves throughout the world, on land and beneath the seas. All are symbolized here by the tomb of the unknowns. Our Commander-in-Chief has just placed a wreath at this tomb. By this act, he has expressed for all Americans, past and present, their deep gratitude to those who have made great sacrifices so that we can be here today physically and mentally free.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise while the President leaves?
For many, this is the first time they see President Kennedy in person. For most, it is the last time.
Would you be seated, please?
Dismiss us now, O Lord, with thy blessings, and accompany us ever with thy grace. Grant that what hath been said with our lips, we may believe in our hearts, and that which we believe in our hearts we may practice in our lives, to thine everlasting glory. Amen.
But this is not the last time a presidential wreath will be laid at the tomb of the unknown, nor the last time people will pause on Veterans Day to honor, remember, and rededicate. What is guarded here goes on. It is not of stone or flesh or any substance. It is a flame in the hearts and minds of men that can never die. Flame that will burn forever.
Leaving trails of steaming vapor in their wake, United States bombers bound for Berlin to destroy armament industries in and around the Nazi war capital. In their first daylight mission over the heart of Hitler's fortress, American bombers combined with British air forces are pounding Germany with raids around the clock. One propeller out, a bomber limps home. In all, 68 American planes failed to return. But the next day and the next, American bombers returned in follow-up raids. Today, squadrons like these in ever-increasing numbers are taking the war home to Germany itself. Back from her fourth wartime journey of mercy, the Swedish exchange ship Gripsholm arrives in New York Harbor. Aboard are 663 Americans home from Nazi internment and prison camps. Wounded soldiers, war correspondents, and diplomats are among her passenger list. They bring first-hand news of conditions in Nazi-occupied countries. Douglas MacArthur, nephew of General MacArthur, was attached to the American embassy at Vichy. Ralph Heinzen was Paris correspondent for an American news service.
We're very glad to get home. We've been 13 months interned in Germany and 13 bad months for the Germans as well as for ourselves, because in those 13 months, Germany has lost the war. They know they're whipped, but they're wondering how they're going to get out of it. Past year, Hitler has lost tremendously his prestige, particularly as a military leader. All through Europe, there's a very fierce underground warfare going on against Germany. In every occupied country of Europe, but particularly in France, there is this mighty organization of courageous patriots who are waging a war day and night against the forces of occupation.
Home on leave after 4 years of battle, units of Australian fighting men get a thundering welcome as they parade through the streets of Sydney. Veterans of fierce desert campaigns in North Africa and rugged fighters fresh from victories in New Guinea, these gallant men fought side by side with their American allies. Australia's General Sir Thomas Blamey takes the official salute as the nation pays tribute to its heroic sons. A transport plane lands at a Caribbean port. Aboard is Mrs. Franklin D. Roosevelt, wife of the President, making the first stop in her latest tour of American Army outposts. With General Shedd commanding garrisons in the Puerto Rican Theater of Operations, she reviews troops on guard in the Caribbean. In Australia, Mrs. Douglas MacArthur, wife of the Allied commander in the Southwest Pacific, sponsors a new destroyer built by Australian workmen.
Listen thee, Bataan, and may God bless you.
And His Majesty's Australian ship Bataan goes down the ways, dedicated to avenge the gallant fighters in the Philippines whose heroism will never be forgotten. Nazi prisoners of war at a camp in northern United States. In full accord with the Geneva Convention, prisoners are well housed, well clothed, and well fed. Although prisoners are not required to work, many volunteer as lumberjacks, for which they are paid 80 cents a day. A snow shoveling detail. Prisoners keep their own camp in order. By doing work like this in the shoe shop, captives are able to buy cigarettes and other luxuries. War prisoners receive the same rations as American soldiers, or an equivalent in their own type of food if they prefer. These Signal Corps pictures show a fully equipped recreation room provided for the captives, who even have their own band. America scrupulously observes the principles of humanity in her treatment of war prisoners. Officers of the Allied military government draw up plans for the evacuation of thousands of homeless civilians from Italian battle areas. At one large estate, more than 10,000 Italians found refuge from fighting zones. Along every road in endless procession, refugees streamed toward collecting stations set up by the Allied military government. Many helpless families, made homeless by the German seizure of their country, were forced north during the Nazi retreat. Stripped of most of their possessions, only a few were adequately clothed or fed until the Allied Fifth Army landed. Removing these helpless people from the ruins of their shattered homes is one of the great rescue achievements of the war. The real tragedy is the plight of the very young. The world into which they were born has been a world of suffering and sorrow. Now the Allied authorities opened the way to a new haven, a haven where they may wait in safety for the day of peace. As swiftly as possible, Army trucks take them to ports of embarkation. Here, giant LSTs, landing ships built to carry huge 30-ton tanks, take on their trucks and their human cargoes for transportation to Naples, 100 miles down the coast. Sanctuary in southern Italy. Here many Italians find new hope and new lives in liberated territory. Chiefs of the Allied Invasion Command at headquarters in England. America's General Eisenhower in supreme command as the United Nations concentrate the most powerfully armed force in history. Warehouses bulge with tons of supplies. Agreements reached at Tehran now being put into action. At hundreds of military depots, thousands of trucks, command cars, jeeps, all kinds of mechanized equipment are assembled for the day of invasion. With General Montgomery and Air Marshal Tedder, deputy commander, Eisenhower sees new equipment in action. Today, great fleets of troop carriers soar over Britain, releasing their hordes of parachutists. Spectacular rehearsal of things to come. Montgomery, victor over Rommel. Tedder, master of air tactics. Eisenhower, liberator of North Africa. The power and might of the United Nations, trained and ready to strike a decisive blow from the West.
An anti-guerrilla raid in Vietnam. There is danger here, danger and discomfort, and sometimes death. There are also Americans here, not to fight, but to observe. A soldier is trained to command, but there are times and places where all he can do is advise. Such a place is the Republic of Vietnam, where the American military advisor is expected to observe, draw conclusions, and give counsel. He may also teach and be a useful friend. What he teaches is the soldier's art. He brings with him years of training in the armed forces of the United States, and because he has been specially selected for his work, a personal aptitude for diplomacy. He also brings courage. For those attempting to destroy this young republic in Southeast Asia are well aware of the role played by such advisors in frustrating the attempt at subversion. The American advisor in Vietnam has no immunity from terrorist bullets. Such are the conditions under which he works. This is the story of what he does.
United States Army presents The Big Picture, an official report produced for the armed forces and the American people.
Korea today is paradoxically a house that stands divided. Slicing across the country is a narrow, demilitarized zone, a bulwark of freedom for the people of the South. This DMZ strip and the freedom it protects were purchased at a cost beyond measure. Both are preserved by the continuing effort of men of many nations. Meet one now, Sergeant Clint Walker, just back from Korea.
All right, men, let's knock off the chatter. Now, to some of you men, this trip to Korea is just going to be so many months of drudgery. To others of you, it's going to be an introduction to a people and a way of life that you've never known. Now, technically, the state of war still exists. And you're being assigned there to maintain the truce and to make sure the war doesn't become a real one again. The way you will work and live will depend a lot on where you're assigned. There's a big difference between the forward areas and the rear areas, such as around Seoul or Busan. But wherever you will be, it will take a man to do the job. I was stationed on the DMZ. It conditions all our thoughts and actions. To the north lies communist-held Korea. Directly in front of us is the neutral zone, an invisible barrier that divides the nation. It is under constant patrol by United Nations.
Veterans Day, November 11th. This nation rededicates itself to peace with honor.
I think it most appropriate that we recall on this occasion and on every other moment when we are faced with great responsibilities, the contribution and the sacrifice which so many men and their families have made in order to permit this country to now occupy its present position of responsibility and freedom, and in order to permit us to gather here together. Let us pray in the name of those who have fallen in this country's wars that there will be no veterans of any further war, not because all shall have perished, but because all shall have learned to live together in peace.